Welcome again to the CZI Annual Conference, and this is still day one, and it's scenario, futures, and systems approaches to strategy and business model innovation. That's a mouthful, but we've got somebody who actually knows what they're talking about and who actually understands what this mouthful is all about. Derek, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Fantastic. So maybe just to kick off this, let's start with what your presentation was all about, your masterclass.
So it was about unleashing the power of business transformation. And the intent was to inspire leaders on their various transformative journeys. And there is a real imperative for businesses to transform. I think if you look at all the major shifts that we've seen both in the global and the local sphere, it would be very surprising if any business has remained unchanged. And it's pushing businesses to transform. But very often we sort of dilute what transformation means. You know, you can use it to describe things that are once in a generational achievement. And then people use it for things that are really irrelevant. So I took the opportunity to look at nature and to say, when you look at the transformation of a butterfly, you know, it starts off basically on the worm side of things, and it eats leaves, it moves very slowly, it crawls, it builds a chrysalis, that's what it does. But then when you compare it with a butterfly that drinks nectar, that flies long distances, and that gives birth, you realize that transformation is so complete, it's so mesmerizing, that when we talk transformation, that's really what we need to be looking at. And for business leaders, there's so many imperatives now that require that we transform our leadership. And in so doing, we're able to create businesses that are future-proofed, businesses that are more equipped to handle the vagaries of the changing dynamics, and that can create real value on a sustainable basis. So that was what I wanted to share with the team. I shared our TSL story because, as you know, we were a tobacco-centric business. That was the entirety of the business. And if we had stayed on that trajectory, I don't think we would be anywhere close to where we are now. But we had to go through a period of introspection. And it took us the better part of a year to figure out, who are we? What is it that gives us a reason for being? What is our purpose? What is the value that we bring to the marketplace? And that process of deep introspection helped us realize that there is a value chain from seed to shelf.
All right, we'll get into the details, but I'm quite interested in the analogy that you gave of a caterpillar that turns into a butterfly. A beautiful analogy. But when you think about it, the caterpillar is not thinking, it's not sentient, it's just going with what nature demands of it, which is very different from us as human beings and as company beings, because we actually need to be conscious of what we're doing. And I want you to maybe harness that thinking, that where is it coming from? What are you trying to say? Are you saying that we must be more attuned to nature or to our nature, or our consciousness needs to be attuned to our environment?
It's an interesting way that you phrased it. Yes. So the caterpillar butterfly is driven by nature. There's no consciousness related to it. We're in a different space where we can actually process the impact of what we do. And we always have a choice. We have a choice to do nothing, which will eventually, in a changing world, lead to obsolescence. Or as leaders, we've been placed in a position where we must actually lead. We have to be deliberate. We have to be conscious about the value that we are creating. And we can't hope and pray that doing nothing will lead us to the right results. We have to actively scan the environment, and see what we must become in order for us to still be relevant in that new environment.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And let me capture it in my own thinking. What you're saying is, when you look at evolutionary biology, if we do absolutely nothing, then we become like dinosaurs. We would have, become obsolete. And that's why the caterpillar is there, and it's not a dinosaur, because dinosaurs could not evolve with time. And that's what we need to do. And perhaps that's the gift that we have as sentient beings, that we can actually consciously change and redirect ourselves.
You said that beautifully.
Okay, fantastic. So then let's come down to TSL. Tell us about the journey of TSL as a caterpillar and TSL as a butterfly.
So we were primarily a tobacco augmented business. Started in 1957, so long, rich, deep history. But our focus at the time had been largely the independent tobacco crop. And as you know, that went from being 100% of everything that was grown to now where it's about 6%. So if we had stayed in that bucket, we would have become irrelevant. In 2018, we went through a strategy process, and we said, who are we? Yes, you've got all these investments and you play in these spaces, but what you do isn't necessarily who you are. So step back and figure out, who are you? And it was uncomfortable because we were sort of floating in no man's land. But that process led us to examining the value chain that we're involved in, which is the agricultural value chain. And from seed to shelf, there's about 24 different touch points. And we said, okay, if we are present in that value chain, who do we want our customers to be? And we decided a customer is anyone who produces, anyone who processes, anyone who trades a commodity. And we decided at that point, we do not compete with our customers, full stop. And that helped to define who we are. So if we're not competing with our customers, we're enabling their movement across the value chain. We've become an integral handler to help them move from one end of the value chain all the way through to the other end. And so our value proposition is, when it comes to risk, when it comes to cost, when it comes to supply chain management, we're the only integrated business that can say to our customers, focus on your core business, leave absolutely everything else to us. So that's what we've built our strategy on. That's what we've built the business model on.
Okay. As an analyst, when you're analyzing TSL, do you buy what Derek is saying?
Yeah. It's not it would have been uncomfortable if the opposite was true. But the fact of the matter is, when I came into the market 25 years ago, their biggest business was the sales floor, and they were processing tobacco for independent growers, and independent growers were the vast majority of growers of the crop. But the world's changed now. You've got about 120,000 tobacco growers, and 94% of them are contract growers. So you don't actually need an auction for that crop, right? Because somebody's already committed to pick it up. So if they hadn't changed their business model, they wouldn't be here. They would have failed. So they have pivoted. They've been dynamic and adjusted to the market. And it's quite interesting that they find themselves in the space in agriculture post land reform that has been most successful, right, by far. If you look at what's happening in the maize space, the yields there are abysmal. And I mean, wheat, we've got some good numbers to report, but it's still not anywhere near as big or interesting as what we're seeing in tobacco. I think we had a record crop in terms of production, and value of tobacco. So I was saying to him before we started this show that it must be a pretty comfortable space to be in because it's doing so well at a sector level. It'll be interesting to see what the next 5-10 years has in store for you, because it has the world has literally changed a lot in the last 10-20 years.
Yeah. And so maybe, clearly it has worked, but maybe explain to us the challenges around transformation. First theoretically, and then also on a practical side when you look at TSL.
Yeah. So I think all change is hard. So just getting people to understand that this is the direction that the business needs to move in. This is where the value can be created. It's a story that you need to consistently and continually tell, because not everyone adopts the thinking on day one. You have your early adopters who are like, just show us where to run and we're good to go. And then there are those who, even as it's successful, are still saying, but I'm sure it's not going to work. So you have to carry the team with you. I think some of the things that we ran into practically is culture. And I was mentioning earlier that, you often hear the statement that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
That's Peter Drucker.
Yes, correct. What we found is that culture eats everything, full stop. So having that right sort of culture is important. And the one part of the culture that we needed to embed was innovation. And innovation, you're effectively saying, we're happy to support you when you fail, because we want you to try. We want you to do something that is different. And there's a higher likelihood that you're going to fail. But what do we learn from that process, and then can we build on it? And most of the reward systems in an organization are rewarding people being successful. So the counterintuitiveness of that is you saying, don't try something where the likelihood of your failure is high. So you have to look at the reward systems. You have to look at how you challenge. You have to look at the people that you bring into the organization. Are you brave enough to build an A team? So from the people, the technology, the processes, the culture of the organization, the mindset, there are just so many things that we had to run into. And then it falls into your leadership structures. So you need buy-in from shareholders. You need buy-in from the board. You need buy-in from your executive committee. My current executive committee, I think maybe one or two of them are from before, under the old structure. A lot of them are new guys, younger guys who've come in, who saw what the opportunity was and who've really stepped up to the plate.
So how do you maintain the integrity of a culture in a Zimbabwean environment? Because you've got the informal sector stealing market share from the formal sector, and in the informal sector, it's literally the Wild West. These are business operators who aren't licensed, who aren't paying any taxes, who don't follow regulations, where anything goes, right? And then, in the formal sector that's left, there's a lot of fear and concern, because, it's tough. We're hamstrung by a lot of regulations. You have ZIMRA raids. It's very difficult. So how do you inculcate a culture where people are willing to take risks, when there's, at a macroeconomic level, there's all this uncertainty, and there's all this lawlessness, frankly.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think as an organization, you need to be true to who you are and you stick to your lane. So we are a corporate, we're listed on the stock exchange. We know what we do and what we don't do. There's certain things we just say no to, and we accept the consequences of that. That having been said, I think it's incumbent on us to create a better future. So what we're calling informal is because that is the future that they can see. But if you create something that is more superior, you can actually get them to come around. And I'll give you an example. So we realized that the tobacco for our auction floor business is deep out there, and we needed to get as much of it as possible to come through. We have very formalized businesses that have 30-ton trucks and can pick up the tobacco from a centralized location, but they're not going to go and drive into the middle of nowhere to pick up 2 bales. But you can organize the transporters who are effectively informal and get them to go and mobilize the tobacco. You can get them to go and deliver the hessian to the farmer and make their life easier. So you're finding a conduit where you can bring them into a system that works and that makes sense. When we partnered with FinSec and CBZ and government to form the Zimbabwe Mercantile Exchange, it's because we realized that there wasn't an orderly marketplace for commodities. And a lot of the farmers that you have would not qualify as formalized farmers. But they are looking for a marketplace. They're looking for pricing that makes sense. And they're looking for opportunities that would be offered to more formalized institutions. And the commodities exchange can do that for them. It gives them access to proper warehousing so that they don't lose so much in post-harvest losses. It gives them access to discounting their warehouse receipts and being able to access financing so that they can go back to the farm. It gives them the freedom to decide when to sell and how to sell without saying, oh, it's me, it's Derek, and I hope you're going to give me a good price. So I think those of us in the formal sector, especially when you're looking at the scale that we want to operate at, have a responsibility to come up with a system that is more inclusive. And if we're able to do that, then maybe what we're looking at as informalized and competition actually isn't. It's just a different part of the ecosystem. And that ecosystem, when it's harnessed correctly, actually makes the whole system much stronger.
No, I think on that note, we can call this a day, harnessing the informal sector into the formal ecosystem so the two can actually work well together. Thank you very much, Derek, for this. I think next time we'll go even deeper, especially on culture and transformation. But thank you very much for joining us, and to our audience, thank you very much. This was a successful day one. See you tomorrow, day two. Cheers.